The lights in the briefing room cast long shadows across the metal table, where three of the most powerful people in human space sat quietly. General Marcus Kane adjusted his collar and looked at the thick document before him. The papers seemed heavy, more than just their physical weight. Admiral Lisa Hayes tapped her fingers on the table while Colonel Jake Morrison stared out the window at the stars beyond the orbital station. Amy Rodriguez stood near the door, trying to stay invisible. She was just a petty officer second class, barely 3 months into her training with the Navy SEALs. Her job today was simple: bring coffee, take notes, and stay quiet. The meeting was way above her level, but someone needed to handle the small tasks while the important people made big decisions. General Kane picked up the first page of the document. "The Galactic Council's Human Integration Treaty," he read aloud, "seems straightforward enough. We sign this and humanity gets full membership in the galactic community." Admiral Hayes nodded. "Our diplomatic team spent 2 years negotiating this. They say it's the best deal we could hope for." Colonel Morrison turned from the window. "The aliens have been patient with us. Most species don't get offered membership this early in their space development. We should be grateful." Amy shifted, her weight from one foot to the other. She had spent her free time reading about galactic politics, studying every treaty and agreement she could find in the ship's database. Something about this deal bothered her, but she couldn't put her finger on it yet. General Kane flipped through the pages quickly. Integration protocols, technology sharing agreements, military cooperation frameworks, all standard stuff. He paused at a section near the middle. "Looks like we'll need to limit our fleet expansion. Reasonable enough? They probably don't want us building too many warships right away." Amy's eyes widened. She had read that section 3 times last night. The language was tricky, but it wasn't just about limiting new ships. It was about reducing the weapons on existing ships, too. The general continued reading. "Colonial development, guidelines, research restrictions, enforcement mechanisms." He flipped faster now, eager to reach the end. "This is all very thorough. Our diplomats did good work." Amy bit her lip. She wanted to say something, but protocol was clear. Junior personnel didn't speak unless asked direct questions. Still, the words on page 47 kept running through her mind. The treaty would cut human weapons to almost nothing. Admiral Hayes checked her watch. "We should sign this soon. The Council is expecting our response within the hour." Colonel Morrison pulled out a recording device. "For the record, we're here to finalize humanity's acceptance of the Galactic Integration Treaty. Present are General Kane, Admiral Hayes, myself, and Petty Officer Rodriguez as witness." Amy's heart started beating faster. She thought about her training, about the oath she took to protect humanity. She thought about her instructors who taught her to think independently and question everything. Most of all, she thought about the hidden clauses she found buried deep in the treaty text. General Kane reached for his stylus. The black pen looked small in his large hand, but Amy knew it would make the biggest decision in human history. Once he signed, there would be no going back. "Wait," Amy said, the word escaping before she could stop it. The 3 officers turned to look at her. The general's eyebrows went up. Admiral Hayes frowned. Colonel Morrison looked confused. "Excuse me?" General Kane's voice was calm but carried a warning. Amy took a deep breath. Her career was probably over, but she had to try. "Sir, don't sign that document." The silence in the room was deafening. Amy could hear her own heartbeat and the distant hum of the station's life support systems. Admiral Hayes leaned forward, in her chair, her face showing disbelief that a junior enlisted person had just given an order to a general. "Petty Officer Rodriguez." Colonel Morrison's voice was ice cold. "You are way out of line. Report to the brig immediately." But General Kane held up his hand, stopping the colonel. The general studied Amy's face carefully. He had not reached his position by ignoring useful information, no matter where it came from. "Explain yourself, Petty Officer. You have 30 seconds. Amy's mouth went dry, but she forced herself to speak clearly. "Sir, that treaty will destroy us. Page 47, subsection 12C says we can't have weapons above Class 3 energy output. That means our main battle fleet becomes useless. Page 73 bans all human research into quantum tunnel technology, which is our biggest advantage in space travel. The general set down his stylus and turned to page 47. Admiral Hayes grabbed her own copy and started reading. Colonel Morrison looked back and forth between them, clearly unsure what was happening. Amy continued, knowing this might be her only chance. But the worst part is in the appendix. Clause 891 gives the Zephyrian Empire veto power over all human colony ships. They can stop us from expanding anywhere they don't want us to go. Admiral Hayes found the clause and read it twice. Her face went pale. Marcus, she's right about this part. How did our diplomatic team miss this? General Kane was reading faster now, his finger moving down the page as he scanned the text. The more he read, the deeper his frown became. These restrictions are much harsher than what we were told. Jake, did you review the full document? Colonel Morrison shook his head. I trusted the summary our people provided. The full treaty is over 300 pages. Amy watched the three officers as understanding dawned on their faces. The treaty wasn't the generous offer they thought it was. It was a trap designed to look like a gift. General Kane closed the document and looked directly at Amy. Petty Officer. Rodriguez, you've raised serious concerns about this treaty. These claims need to be investigated thoroughly before we make any decisions. Admiral Hayes stood up. I'll contact our diplomatic team immediately. We need answers about these clauses. Colonel Morrison cleared his throat. What about the Council's deadline? They're expecting our signature within the hour. The general thought for a moment. We'll request an extension for additional review. If they refuse, that tells us something important about their true intentions. Amy felt relief wash over her, but she knew this was just the beginning. If she was right about the treaty, humanity was in more danger than anyone realized. If she was wrong, her career was finished and she might face charges for interfering with official government business. General Kane stood and walked over to Amy. Petty Officer, you've shown remarkable initiative today, but now you need to prove your claims. I'm giving you 48 hours to prepare a complete analysis of this treaty and its implications for humanity. If you're wrong, you'll face serious consequences. If you're right, you might just save our species. Amy straightened her shoulders and looked the general in the eye. Understood, sir, I won't let you down. Amy Rodriguez walked quickly down the corridor of the orbital station, her mind racing faster than her feet. 48 hours to prove that the most important treaty in human history was actually a death sentence. She had never felt pressure like this before, not even during her toughest SEAL training exercises. The station's computer terminal beeped as she entered her access code. The treaty document appeared on the screen, all 312 pages of dense legal text. Amy rubbed her eyes and started reading from the beginning, this time taking notes on everything that seemed wrong. 3 hours later, Lieutenant Commander Steve Parker found her still hunched over the terminal. He was a big man with gray hair and tired eyes who had spent 20 years in military intelligence. Rodriguez, right? Heard you caused quite a stir in the briefing room. Amy looked up, unsure if he was there to help or arrest her. Yes, sir. Just trying to do my job. Steve pulled up a chair. Your job is to serve coffee and take notes. Challenging a general's decision isn't in your job description. He paused and studied her face. Lucky for you, I think you might be onto something. Relief flooded through Amy. You've read the treaty? Parts of it. Been working intelligence long enough to spot a bad deal when I see one. Steve pointed at the screen. Show me what you found. For the next hour, Amy walked Steve through the treaty clause by clause. The document was written in a way that made the dangerous parts hard to spot. Important restrictions were buried in technical language or hidden in appendices. The aliens had been very clever about making it look generous while actually being devastating. Look at this section about trade agreements, Amy said, pointing to page 115. It says humans can export raw materials freely, but we need council approval for any manufactured goods or technology. That keeps us as a supply source but prevents us from competing with alien industries. Steve whistled softly. Classic economic control. Keep the new guys providing cheap resources while blocking them from developing their own advanced economy. He leaned back in his chair. What else? Amy flipped to another section. The military cooperation framework sounds good on the surface. Joint training exercises, shared defense protocols, technology exchange. But read the fine print. Human forces can only operate in designated zones. Our ships need council permission to enter most of galactic space, and this part here basically makes us junior partners in our own defense. While their ships can go anywhere they want in human space, Steve I added, reading over her shoulder. They get access to everything while we get access to almost nothing. The terminal chimed with an incoming message. Dr. Helen Carter's face appeared on the screen. She was the station's chief xenobiologist, a small woman with sharp eyes who had studied alien cultures for 15 years. I heard through the grapevine that you two are looking into the integration treaty, Dr. Carter said. Mind if I join your little research party? I've got some insights that might interest you. 20 minutes later, the three of them sat around a larger terminal in Steve's office. Dr. Carter had brought files on 17 different species that had joined the Galactic Council over the past century. Every single one of these species signed similar integration treaties, Dr. Carter explained. The language varies, but the structure is always the same. Restrictions on military development, limits on territorial expansion, economic controls that favor existing council members. Amy studied the files. What happened to these species after they signed? Dr. Carter's expression grew dark. 12 of them are extinct. The other 5 exist as client states under direct alien control. None of them maintained their independence for more than 50 years after integration. Steve leaned forward. That's not a coincidence. This is a pattern. Exactly, Dr. Carter continued. The Council has perfected a system for eliminating potential rivals. They offer membership as a reward, but it's actually a trap. Once a species signs, they're locked into agreements that slowly strangle their development. Amy felt sick to her stomach. So the Council isn't really about cooperation between equals. It's about control. Think about it from their perspective, Dr. Carter said. Humanity has advanced faster in 50 years than most species do in centuries. Our technology, our adaptability, our military potential, we're everything they fear in a rival power. Steve pulled up a comparison chart on his screen. Look at this. Human faster-than-light technology is 30% more efficient than the best Zephyrian designs. Our energy weapons have 50% better power-to-weight ratios. Our artificial intelligence systems are generations ahead of anything else in the galaxy. And our military doctrine is completely different from theirs, Amy added. They fight with rigid formations and hierarchical command structures. We train for flexibility and independent thinking. That scares them. Dr. Carter nodded. Every other species in the Council evolved on worlds that shaped them for specific environmental niches. They think in predictable patterns. Humans evolved as persistence hunters on a world with every possible environment. We're natural problem solvers and improvisers. Amy looked at the data scrolling across the screen. The picture was becoming clear, and it was terrifying. They know that if we continue developing at our current rate, we'll surpass them militarily within a generation. So they're trying to clip our wings before we can fly. The question is, what do we do about it? Steve asked. Amy had been thinking about this since the meeting ended. We need to reject the treaty, but we can't just say no and walk away. They'll find another way to stop us, probably through force. You're talking about war, Dr. Carter said quietly. I'm talking about survival, Amy replied. If we sign this treaty, we die slowly over 50 years. If we reject it, they'll probably attack us directly. At least that way we have a chance to fight back. Steve was quiet for a long moment. There might be a third option. What if we appear to be considering the treaty while secretly preparing for conflict? Buy ourselves time to build up our defenses. Amy's eyes lit up. A covert military expansion disguised as peaceful activities. Exploration. Missions that are actually scouting for base locations. Scientific expeditions that are really military supply runs. Research stations that are actually weapons platforms, Steve added. Trade missions that position our ships throughout the galaxy. Dr. Carter looked worried. You're talking about deceiving the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. That's incredibly dangerous. Everything is dangerous now, Amy said. But at least this way we control our own fate. Steve started making notes. We'll need to present this as a comprehensive plan. General Kane won't authorize something this big based on theory alone. Amy spent the next 6 hours working with Steve and Dr. Carter to develop what they called Operation Silent Thunder. The plan involved rejecting the treaty publicly while secretly preparing for war. Every human activity in space would have a dual purpose, peaceful on the surface, military underneath. When they finally finished, Amy looked at the clock and realized she had been awake for 22 hours straight, but she felt more energized than ever. Tomorrow she would present their findings to General Kane and the other senior officers. If they agreed, humanity would begin the biggest military buildup in its history. If they disagreed, or if the plan failed, humanity would face extinction within a generation. Amy saved their work and headed to her quarters for a few hours of sleep. As she walked through the station's corridors, she thought about all the people sleeping peacefully around her. None of them knew how close they had come to signing away their species' future. Tomorrow would determine whether humanity lived free or died in chains. The responsibility felt crushing, but Amy knew she had no choice but to carry it. Someone had to stand up and fight for humanity's future, even if that someone was just a SEAL recruit who had learned to read the fine print. Amy Rodriguez stood at attention in the briefing room, the same room where everything had started 47 hours ago. This time the audience was much larger. General Kane sat at the head of the table, flanked by Admiral Hayes and Colonel Morrison. 3 more admirals had joined them, along with 2 generals Amy didn't recognize. At the far end of the table, a holographic projection showed President Maria Santos calling in from Earth. Petty Officer Rodriguez, General Kane began, his voice formal and commanding. You've had 48 hours to analyze the integration treaty and present your findings. Before we begin, I want to be clear about the stakes. If your analysis proves incorrect, you will face court-martial for interfering with critical diplomatic negotiations. If you're right, you may have saved humanity from making the worst mistake in our history. Amy swallowed hard and activated the wall display. Thank you, sir. I've prepared a comprehensive analysis with the help of Lieutenant Commander Parker and Dr. Carter. The first slide showed a timeline of galactic civilizations. Over the past century, 17 species have joined the Galactic Council through integration treaties similar to the one offered to humanity. I've tracked what happened to each of these species after signing. President Santos leaned forward in her holographic projection. What did you find? Amy clicked to the next slide, showing a galaxy map with colored dots representing different species. 12 of these species are now extinct. Complete population elimination within 50 years of integration. 5 others exist as client states, with no real independence. None maintain their sovereign status. Admiral Hayes frowned. That could be coincidence. Space is dangerous. Species go extinct for many reasons. That's what I thought initially, Amy replied, clicking to a detailed breakdown. But when I examined the pattern of decline, it's identical in every case. First, military restrictions prevent them from defending themselves effectively. Second, economic controls slowly drain their resources. Third, territorial limitations stop them from expanding and finding new resources. Finally, when they're weakened enough, they either collapse internally or get absorbed by stronger council members. General Kane studied the data carefully. Show us the specific treaty provisions that create this pattern. Amy spent the next 20 minutes walking through the treaty clause by clause. She showed how the military restrictions would reduce human naval capacity by 60% within 5 years. The economic provisions would make humanity a resource supplier, while blocking technological development. The territorial controls would trap human expansion in a small corner of the galaxy. The most dangerous clause is hidden in Appendix C, Amy explained, highlighting the relevant text. It gives the Zephyrian Empire veto power over human colonial expansion. Since the Zephyrians control the most resource-rich regions of this galactic arm, they can effectively bottle us up in our current space. Colonel Morrison looked skeptical. Our diplomatic team reviewed this treaty for 2 years. Are you saying they missed all of this? Steve Parker stepped forward. With permission, sir, I believe our diplomatic team was deliberately misled. The aliens presented summary documents that emphasized the benefits while downplaying the restrictions. The full treaty language is intentionally obscure and technical, Dr. Carter added. I've studied the psychological profiles of the species involved in these negotiations. The Zephyrians and their allies are master manipulators. They've had centuries to perfect the art of making slavery look like partnership. President Santos spoke from her projection. Assuming your analysis is correct, what do you recommend we do? We can't simply reject the treaty without consequences. Amy clicked to her final slide, titled Operation Silent Thunder. We publicly request more time to review the treaty while privately preparing for the inevitable conflict. The aliens won't wait forever for our answer, and they won't accept a simple rejection. General Kane leaned back in his chair. Explain this operation. We disguise military preparation as peaceful activities, Amy explained. Scientific expeditions that scout for base locations, trade missions that position supply ships throughout human space, research stations that can quickly convert to weapons platforms, cultural exchange programs that place our people in alien territory to gather intelligence. Admiral Hayes raised her hand. You're talking about a massive deception operation. The aliens aren't stupid, they'll figure out what we're doing. Steve replied, not if we're careful. Humans have one major advantage, we're unpredictable. Every other species in the galaxy thinks in rigid patterns. They'll expect us to either accept or reject the treaty openly. They won't expect a long-term deception campaign. Dr. Carter pulled up another display. I've analyzed alien psychology extensively. They have trouble understanding species that don't fit their established patterns. Humans evolved as pack hunters who used cooperation and cunning to take down much larger prey. That mindset is completely foreign to aliens who evolved as either predators or prey. President Santos asked, how long would this preparation phase last? Amy had spent hours calculating this. 6 to 8 months minimum. We need to establish hidden bases, position our fleets, and build up our weapon stockpiles. We also need time to develop new technologies that can give us an edge in combat. General Kane stood and walked to the window overlooking the shipyard. Dozens of human vessels were docked there looking small and fragile compared to the alien ships they might soon face in battle. This is an enormous risk. If we're discovered before we're ready, the aliens could crush us before we have a chance to fight back. With respect, sir, Amy said, we're already taking an enormous risk by existing. The aliens have decided we're a threat. The only question is whether we die on our knees or on our feet. The room fell silent as the senior officers considered Amy's words. President Santos was the first to speak. General Kane, what's your assessment of this plan? The general turned back to the group. It's audacious and dangerous. It could start a war that destroys our species. He paused and looked directly at Amy. But it might be our only chance to survive as a free people. Admiral Hayes nodded slowly. Our current intelligence suggests the aliens are already preparing for some kind of action against us. Multiple Zephyrian fleets have moved closer to human space in recent weeks. Colonel Morrison added, if we're going to fight, better to do it on our terms with time to prepare. President Santos made the decision that would change galactic history. Operation Silent Thunder is authorized. General Kane, you'll oversee the military aspects. Petty Officer Rodriguez, you're promoted to lieutenant and assigned as strategic planning coordinator. Your job is to make sure this deception works. Amy felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders like a lead blanket. Understood, Madam President, I won't let humanity down. General Kane walked over to Amy and extended his hand. Lieutenant Rodriguez, you've shown remarkable courage and insight, but this is just the beginning. The real test comes when the aliens discover what we're doing and decide to stop us. Amy shook the general's hand firmly. We'll be ready for them, sir. As the meeting broke up, Amy realized her life had changed completely in less than 48 hours. She had gone from a junior enlisted person serving coffee to a lieutenant responsible for planning humanity's survival. The promotion felt both thrilling and terrifying. Steve Parker approached her as the senior officers filed out. "Think you're ready for this responsibility?" Amy looked out at the stars beyond the station, knowing that somewhere among them, alien civilizations were planning humanity's destruction. "I don't know if anyone could be ready for something this big, but somebody has to do it, and it might as well be me." Dr. Carter joined them at the window. "The next few months will determine whether humanity joins the ranks of free galactic civilizations or becomes another footnote in alien history books." Amy thought about all the humans living their daily lives throughout the galaxy, unaware that their species stood at a crossroads. They were counting on people like her to make the right choices, even if they never knew it. "Then we'd better get to work," Amy said, turning away from the window toward her new responsibilities. The real challenge was just beginning. 6 weeks into Operation Silent Thunder, Amy Rodriguez sat in her new office aboard the command ship Defender, surrounded by holographic displays showing human activities across the galaxy. What had started as a desperate plan was becoming the largest military operation in human history, hidden behind a facade of peaceful exploration and scientific research. Captain Ben Rogers appeared on one of her screens, calling from the stealth vessel Phantom. His ship was part of the new covert fleet Amy had helped design, vessels that looked like civilian cargo haulers but packed enough firepower to level a city. "Lieutenant Rodriguez, we've completed the survey of the Kepler system. Perfect location. For a hidden base just like you predicted." Amy nodded and made notes on her tactical display. "Excellent work, Captain. How long until the facility is operational?" 3 weeks if we work around the clock. The asteroid field provides perfect cover, and there's plenty of raw materials for construction." Another screen lit up with Major Lisa Thompson calling from the Marine Training Facility on Europa. "Amy, our new Rapid Response Corps is ahead of schedule. These volunteers are incredible. They're mastering zero-gravity combat faster than anyone expected." Amy smiled at her. Friend's enthusiasm. Lisa had been promoted to lead the Marine expansion program, turning regular soldiers into elite spacefighters. "How many trained units do we have now?" 15 full companies with 5 more graduating next week. Commander Chen's new equipment makes a huge difference too. Amy switched to another display showing Commander Alex Chen in his weapons research lab. The brilliant engineer had been working 18-hour days developing new technologies that could give humans an edge against superior alien numbers. "Alex, what's the status on the plasma rifle project?" Alex held up a sleek weapon that looked nothing like traditional human firearms. "Field tests are exceeding expectations. These rifles can punch through Zephyrian armor like paper. We're also making progress on the personal shield generators." "Outstanding. How soon can we begin full production?" "Give me another month and we'll be churning out 1,000 units per week." Amy leaned back in her chair, amazed at how much they had accomplished in such a short time. Hidden bases throughout human space, new weapons that could match alien technology, elite troops trained for the unique challenges of space warfare. But she knew their window of opportunity was closing fast. Dr. Carter entered Amy's office carrying a data pad with a worried expression. "We have a problem. Zephyrian scout ships have been detected near 3 of our construction sites. They're not investigating yet, but they're getting suspicious." Amy's stomach dropped. They had always known discovery was a risk, but she had hoped for more time. "How long do you think we have before they figure out what we're really doing?" "Weeks, maybe less. The aliens aren't stupid. Too many human research expeditions in strategically important locations will eventually form a pattern they can't ignore." Amy called an emergency meeting with General Kane and the other senior commanders. Within an hour, the holographic conference room was filled with the leaders of Operation Silent Thunder, all wearing grim expressions. General Kane wasted no time on pleasantries. "Dr. Carter's intelligence suggests we may be running out of time. What's our current readiness status?" Admiral Hayes consulted her data pad. "Naval forces are at 60% of planned strength. We have enough ships for defensive operations, but not enough for a full offensive campaign. Colonel Morrison added, "Ground forces are in better shape. Major Thompson's Marines are ready for deployment, and our planetary defenses are mostly complete." Commander Chen spoke from his lab. "Weapons production is accelerating, but we're still weeks away from full output. If fighting starts soon, we'll have to make do with what we've got." Amy studied the tactical displays showing human forces throughout the galaxy. They had accomplished more than anyone thought possible, but it still wasn't enough. "What if we accelerate the timeline? Push everything forward by 6 weeks?" Captain Rogers shook his head. "Some of the base construction can't be rushed. The hidden shipyards especially. We're building underground to avoid detection." General Kane was quiet for a long moment, studying the reports and data flowing across his screens. Finally, he spoke. "We're as ready as we can be given the circumstances. The question now is whether we wait for them to discover us or reveal ourselves on our own terms." "What do you mean?" Amy asked. "I mean we publicly reject the integration treaty and announce that humanity chooses to remain independent. That forces their hand and gives us control over the timing." Dr. Carter looked alarmed. "That's essentially declaring war on the most powerful alliance in the galaxy." "We're already at war," Amy replied. "The aliens decided that when they wrote that treaty. The only difference is whether we admit it or keep pretending we don't know what they're planning." President Santos joined the conversation via hologram, having been briefed on the latest developments. "General Kane, what's your recommendation?" "I recommend we reject the treaty publicly within 72 hours. That gives us time to position our forces and send out final preparations to our hidden bases. Once we announce our decision, we'll have perhaps days before they attack." Admiral Hayes looked worried. "We're talking about fighting a war against enemies who outnumber us 10 to 1 and have superior technology." Amy stood up and activated the main display, showing the galaxy with human territory marked in blue and alien territory in various other colors. "They do outnumber us, but they also underestimate us. Every alien species fights the same way. Big fleets, rigid formations, predictable tactics. We've trained for something completely different." She clicked to a tactical analysis she had been developing. "Human doctrine emphasizes speed, flexibility, and independent thinking. While they're forming up their battle lines, we'll be hitting their supply convoys and communication centers. While they're following established protocols, we'll be adapting to circumstances they never considered." Captain Rogers nodded enthusiastically. "The Phantom and her sister ships are perfect for that kind of warfare. We can strike anywhere in their territory and disappear before they know what hit them." Major Thompson added, "Our Marine boarding teams can disable their capital ships from the inside. Alien security is designed to stop external attacks, not infiltration by soldiers who think like humans." Commander Chen pulled up specifications for their new weapons. "Their shields and armor are optimized against their own technology. Our plasma rifles use completely different energy frequencies. They won't know how to defend against them initially." Amy felt the familiar surge of confidence that had carried her through SEAL training. "We're not just fighting for territory or resources. We're fighting for the right to exist as a free species. That gives us something they don't have: desperation." General Kane made his decision. "President Santos, I recommend we proceed with the treaty rejection. We'll never be more ready than we are right now." President Santos was quiet for several seconds, clearly weighing the enormous consequences of her next words. "Very well. I'll address the Galactic Council tomorrow and formally reject the integration treaty. General Kane, prepare for immediate military action." As the meeting ended and the various commanders signed off to prepare their forces, Amy realized she was no longer nervous. The uncertainty was over. Within days, possibly hours, humanity would be fighting for its survival against impossible odds, but they would be fighting as free people, not slaves. Dr. Carter remained in Amy's office after the others left. "Are you sure we're doing the right thing? Once this starts, there's no going back." Amy looked out at the stars, knowing that alien fleets were already moving toward human space. "We never had a choice about fighting. The only choice was whether to fight while we still had hope of winning. And do we have hope? Amy thought about Captain Rogers and his stealth ships, Major Thompson and her elite Marines, Commander Chen and his revolutionary weapons. She thought about the hidden bases scattered throughout the galaxy and the thousands of humans who had volunteered for the most dangerous mission in history. Yes, she said finally. We have hope. And sometimes that's enough. President Maria Santos stood before the assembled representatives of the Galactic Council, her image transmitted across light years to the massive chamber on the neutral world of Concordia. Amy Rodriguez watched from the command center aboard the Defender, knowing that the next few minutes would determine whether humanity lived free or died fighting. Honored representatives, President Santos began, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to say. After careful consideration of the integration treaty offered to humanity, we must respectfully decline membership in the Galactic Council at this time. The reaction was immediate and violent. Alien representatives erupted in angry chittering, roaring, and other sounds that the translation systems struggled to convert into human language. The Zephyrian ambassador, a tall reptilian being with scales that shifted color with emotion, rose from his seat with scales flashing deep red. This is unacceptable, the Zephyrian hissed through the translator. The Treaty of Integration is not a request. It is a requirement for all species that reach interstellar capability. Humanity cannot refuse. President Santos remained calm. With respect, Ambassador Vorthak, humanity chooses to develop independently for the present time. We remain open to future cooperation on mutually beneficial terms. The council chamber erupted again, but this time Amy could hear the underlying tone of threat in the alien voices. Dr. Carter, standing beside Amy in the command center, translated what the computers couldn't capture. They're saying things like, "Teach them their place in uncontrolled expansion threat," Dr. Carter whispered. The Zephyrian ambassador just used a phrase that roughly translates to final solution for the human problem. Amy felt her blood run cold. Even though they had expected this reaction, hearing the aliens discuss humanity's elimination so casually was chilling. She activated her communicator to address all human forces simultaneously. All stations, this is Lieutenant Rodriguez. Presidential announcement complete. Condition Red is now in effect. All units assume combat readiness immediately. Across human space. The response was instantaneous. Hidden bases powered up their defense systems. Stealth ships emerged from asteroid fields and nebulae where they had been waiting. Civilian vessels began evacuating non-essential personnel from frontier colonies. General Kane joined Amy at the tactical display. How long before they move against us? Intelligence suggests the Zephyrian fleet has been positioned for immediate deployment, Amy replied, highlighting enemy ship movements on the galaxy map. They were clearly expecting us to reject the treaty. Captain Rogers' voice crackled over the communicator from the Phantom. Amy, we're detecting massive fleet movements throughout Zephyrian space. At least 200 capital ships heading toward our territory. Major Thompson checked in from Europa base. Marine forces are loaded and ready for deployment. Just give us targets and we'll take them. Commander Chen reported from the weapons facility. Production lines are running at maximum capacity. We've got enough plasma rifles for the first wave of Marines, but don't expect miracles if this drags on too long. Amy studied the incoming intelligence reports. The alien response was even larger than their worst-case scenarios had predicted. General, they're not just sending a warning force, this is a full extermination fleet. Admiral Hayes appeared on the communication screen from her flagship Independence. Amy, we're picking up alien transmissions that suggest they're planning to hit our 3 most important colonies simultaneously. They want to cripple our ability to resist before we can organize. Amy felt the familiar calm that came over her during combat situations. All the planning and preparation was over. Now, it was time to execute. Admiral, deploy our forces according to Plan Delta. Captain Rogers, take your stealth squadron and begin harassment operations against their supply lines. Major Thompson, prepare for immediate deployment to Colony Prime. That's where they'll hit first and hardest. General Kane nodded approvingly. What about our trump card? Amy smiled grimly. The trump card was Operation Chaos Protocol, a battle plan she had developed based on her SEAL training principles. Instead of meeting the aliens in traditional fleet engagement, human forces would use unpredictable tactics designed to exploit alien psychology. We implement chaos protocol as soon as their main fleet enters human space, Amy said. Let them think they understand how we fight, then show them they're wrong. Dr. Carter was monitoring alien communications when she suddenly looked up with alarm. Amy, the Zephyrian fleet just accelerated. They'll reach our outer colonies in 18 hours instead of the predicted 36. They're not wasting any time, General Kane observed. Apparently they want to finish this quickly. Amy made rapid calculations on her tactical computer. Actually, this works in our favor. The faster they move, the more spread out their formations become, and they'll arrive before their supporting fleets can catch up. She opened communications to all human commanders. Attention all forces. Enemy timeline has accelerated. Colony. Prime will be under attack in 18 hours. All units implement emergency deployment protocols immediately. The next several hours were a whirlwind of activity as human forces moved into position. Amy coordinated the massive operation from the Defender's command center, tracking hundreds of ships and thousands of personnel across dozens of star systems. Captain Rogers reported successful deployment of his stealth squadron in alien space. We're in position behind enemy lines, ready to begin disruption operations on your command. Major Thompson confirmed that her Marine forces had reached Colony Prime. We've got 15 companies dug in around the primary settlements. The civilians have been evacuated to the underground shelters. We're as ready as we can be. Commander Chen had worked a minor miracle, delivering advanced weapons to the frontline troops just hours before the expected attack. Every Marine has plasma rifles and personal shields. The colony's defense platforms have been upgraded with our new energy cannons. Admiral Hayes positioned the main fleet in a defensive formation that looked traditional but contained hidden surprises. The aliens will expect us to fight like other species, big ships slugging it out in formation. They're going to get a very different kind of battle. As the final hours ticked away, Amy found herself thinking about the conversation that had started everything. A simple moment in a briefing room when she chose to speak up instead of staying silent. Now, hundreds of thousands of humans were preparing to fight and possibly die because of that decision. Dr. Carter seemed to sense her thoughts. Having second thoughts? Amy shook her head. No, we're doing the right thing, the only thing. But I can't help thinking about all the people whose lives are about to change forever. General Kane overheard and placed a hand on Amy's shoulder. Lieutenant, every leader in history has felt that weight. The difference between good leaders and bad ones is what they do with that feeling. Amy straightened her shoulders and looked at the tactical display showing human forces spread across the galaxy. Every ship represented real people who had volunteered for this mission. Every base contained families who had chosen to stand and fight rather than run or surrender. Then we make sure their sacrifice means something, she said. We don't just survive this war, we win it. The communication system chimed with an urgent alert. Captain Rogers' voice came through clearly despite the distance. All stations, this is Phantom. Enemy fleet has entered the outer system. They're heading straight for Colony Prime, just like we predicted. Amy felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that came before combat. All forces, this is Command. Enemy contact confirmed. Operation Chaos Protocol is now active. Show them what humans can do. The first interstellar war had begun and humanity was ready to fight for its survival. The Zephyrian battle fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Colony Prime system, like a storm of steel and energy. Amy Rodriguez watched from the Defender's command center as her sensors counted the enemy ships. 123 vessels ranging from massive dreadnoughts to swift destroyers, all bristling with weapons designed to reduce human colonies to radioactive ash. Admiral Vorthak, commanding the Zephyrian forces from his flagship Dominator, opened a communication channel that reached every human receiver in the system. His reptilian face filled screens across Colony Prime as he delivered what he clearly expected to be humanity's final ultimatum. Humans of this system, Vorthak's voice carried the cold certainty of absolute power. You have rejected the generous offer of integration into the galactic community. You have chosen the path of defiance against your superiors. Surrender now and accept client status under Zephyrian protection, or be destroyed completely. Amy activated her response transmitter, knowing that this moment would be remembered for as long as humans existed among the stars. Admiral Vorthak, this is Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez representing the free people of humanity. Your offer is rejected. Colony Prime will not surrender to alien tyranny. Vorthak's scales shifted to deep crimson, a sign of rage that the translation systems didn't need to interpret. Then you have chosen extinction, little human. Watch as your pathetic defenses crumble before superior firepower. The Zephyrian fleet advanced in perfect formation, massive ships moving with the precision of a military parade. Amy had studied their tactics extensively. They preferred overwhelming displays of force designed to break enemy morale before the real fighting began. All human forces maintain concealment until they commit to their attack pattern, Amy ordered. Let them think we're going to fight the way everyone else does. Colony Prime's visible defenses activated as the aliens approached. Orbital platforms and surface-based energy cannons opened fire, sending streams of plasma toward the approaching fleet. The Zephyrian shields absorbed the attacks easily, just as Amy had expected. Predictable, Vorthak's voice carried across the communication channels. Your weapons cannot penetrate our defenses. Surrender now and spare your civilians unnecessary suffering. But Amy wasn't relying on the visible defenses. Those were just a distraction while her real weapons moved into position. Captain Rogers, are you in position behind their lines? Affirmative. Rogers replied from the stealth ship Phantom, now hidden in the asteroid field behind the Zephyrian fleet. 6 stealth ships ready to begin harassment operations. Major Thompson, status of Marine Forces. 15 companies ready for boarding operations. Personal shields and plasma rifles tested and operational. Amy watched as the Zephyrian fleet arranged itself in the classic formation they used against all enemies. Heavy ships in the center, lighter vessels protecting, the flanks all maintaining perfect order and discipline. It was exactly what she had hoped for. Execute Chaos Protocol, Amy commanded. The first phase of the human counterattack began with Captain Rogers and his stealth squadron. While the Zephyrian fleet focused on the colony's defenses, 6 human ships appeared behind them as if materializing out of empty space. Their plasma torpedoes struck the aliens' unprotected rear sections, disabling engines and communication arrays. The Zephyrian formation wavered as ships tried to turn and face this unexpected threat. But before they could respond effectively, the second phase began. Major Thompson's Marines launched from hidden positions throughout the asteroid field, their small assault craft accelerating toward the largest Zephyrian ships. The aliens had never faced boarding actions during fleet combat. Their military doctrine didn't account for enemies crazy enough to attack capital ships with small boats. Boarding craft away, Thompson reported as her Marines streaked toward their targets. Plasma rifles are cutting through their hull armor like butter. The third phase was Amy's masterpiece. As the Zephyrian fleet struggled to deal with attacks, from behind and boarding parties from the sides, the main human fleet revealed itself. But instead of the traditional formation the aliens expected, the human ships attacked in small groups from multiple directions, using the colony's gravity well and asteroid field to mask their approach. Admiral Hayes led the charge from the Independence. All ships target their command vessels, cut off their ability to coordinate a response. The Zephyrian fleet, designed for overwhelming firepower in organized formations, found itself fighting a dozen smaller battles simultaneously. Their rigid command structure couldn't adapt quickly enough to the chaos that human tactics created. Amy monitored the battle from her command center, coordinating the complex operation like a conductor directing an orchestra. Phantom Squadron hit their supply ships. Thompson's Marines disable their flagship's weapons. Independence Group take out their communications array. Admiral Vorthak's confident voice had changed to something approaching panic. All ships, perform defensive pattern beta. Concentrate fire on the largest human vessels. But the humans weren't fighting like any enemy the Zephyrians had encountered before. Each time the aliens tried to focus on one group of ships, another group would attack from an unexpected direction. The boarding Marines were causing chaos inside their vessels, disabling systems and creating internal fires that forced crews to fight on multiple fronts. Major Thompson's voice came through clearly despite the battle raging around her. "We've taken the flagship's bridge. Admiral Vorthak is requesting immediate evacuation." Amy smiled grimly. The Zephyrian commander who had threatened to exterminate humanity was now running for his life from a squad of human marines armed with weapons his people couldn't defend against. "Negative on the evacuation," Amy replied. "Take him prisoner. We'll need him for interrogation." The battle continued for 6 more hours, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. The Zephyrian fleet, caught off guard by human tactics they had never encountered, began withdrawing in disorder. Ships that had entered the system in perfect formation now fled as individual vessels, many trailing atmosphere and debris from human attacks. Captain Rogers reported the final tally as the last alien ships disappeared into faster-than-light travel. Enemy fleet withdrawing. We count 43 ships disabled or destroyed, including their flagship. Human losses: 7 ships damaged, none destroyed. Casualties minimal. The command center erupted in cheers, but Amy remained focused on the larger picture. This was just their first probe. They'll be back with more ships and better preparations. General Kane, who had monitored the battle from Earth, appeared on the communication screen. "Outstanding work, Lieutenant. But you're right about this being just the beginning. Intelligence reports suggest the aliens are mobilizing their entire military for the next attack." Amy studied the tactical displays showing alien fleet movements throughout the galaxy. The victory at Colony Prime had bought them time, but the real war was just starting. Dr. Carter approached with an analysis of the battle communications they had intercepted. "Amy, you need to see this. The Zephyrians are completely baffled by our tactics. They're calling us chaos fighters and unpredictable barbarians. Their military leaders are arguing about how to counter strategies they don't understand." "Good," Amy replied. "Confusion is our greatest weapon. As long as they can't predict what we'll do next, we have an advantage despite their superior numbers." Admiral Hayes docked with the Defender to deliver her report in person. The plasma, rifles, and personal shields performed beyond expectations. Our Marines were able to board and capture ships that should have been invulnerable to small unit tactics. Amy felt a surge of pride in the humans who had fought so brilliantly in their first interstellar battle. "Signal all units. Phase 1 complete. Begin Phase 2 preparations immediately." As reports continued flooding in from across human space, Amy realized they had achieved something no one thought possible. A species that had been in space for less than a century had just defeated the military forces of a galactic empire. But she also knew the aliens would learn from this defeat and adapt their tactics. The next battle would be much harder, and the stakes would be even higher. The war for humanity's survival had begun with a victory, but Amy understood that the real test was yet to come. 3 months after the victory at Colony Prime, Amy Rodriguez stood in the Strategic Planning Center aboard the newly constructed Battle Station Guardian, watching holographic displays that showed the largest military buildup in galactic history. The aliens had not taken their defeat lightly. Dr. Carter pointed to intelligence reports streaming across the screens. 5 separate alien species have joined the campaign against humanity. They're calling it the final pacification. Over 800 ships from 6 different fleets all converging on human space. Amy studied the force disposition with the calm that came from months of constant warfare. The victory at Colony Prime had been followed by 17 other battles across human territory. Each engagement had taught her more about alien psychology and tactics. "They're still thinking like prey animals," Amy observed, highlighting the alien fleet formations on her display. "Look at this. Perfect geometric patterns, maximum firepower concentration, rigid command hierarchies. They're trying to solve the human problem with overwhelming force applied in traditional ways." General Kane joined them at the tactical display, looking older but more confident than he had during those first desperate weeks. "Intelligence suggests they're planning simultaneous attacks on all major human colonies. Classic strategy. Divide our forces so we can't concentrate our defenses." "Which is exactly what we want them to do," Amy replied, pulling up her latest strategic analysis. Their biggest advantage is numbers. Their biggest weakness is inflexibility. If we can force them to fight multiple separate battles instead of one large one, we can defeat them in detail. Captain Rogers appeared on the communication screen from his flagship Phantom, now leading a squadron of 30 stealth vessels. Amy, our deep reconnaissance confirms what intelligence predicted. The alien fleets are moving to predetermined positions. They haven't deviated from their original plan despite our proven ability to counter their tactics. Major Thompson now, a colonel commanding the Rapid Response Marine Corps, added her assessment from the training facility on Europa. Our boarding tactics are becoming more effective with each engagement. The aliens have tried to counter us by increasing internal security, but that just means more of their crew are tied up guarding against infiltration instead of fighting the ship. Amy nodded, her mind working through the complex calculations of interstellar warfare. Over the past months, she had developed what military historians would later call the Chaos Protocol, a complete military doctrine based on human psychological advantages over alien thinking patterns. The key insight, Amy explained to the assembled commanders, is that every other species in the galaxy evolved in ecological niches that selected for specific survival strategies. The Zephyrians were apex predators, so they think in terms of dominance and direct confrontation. The Altarians were herd animals, so they instinctively formed defensive groups. The Centaurans were persistence hunters like early humans, but they evolved in stable environments that rewarded patient, methodical approaches. Dr. Carter had spent months analyzing the psychological profiles of different alien species. Humans are unique because we evolved as persistence hunters in constantly changing environments. We're the only species that developed high intelligence, specifically to deal with unpredictability, which means while they're trying to impose order on chaos, we're comfortable operating within chaos, Amy continued. Every time they adapt to our tactics, we simply develop new ones. They can't keep up because their minds don't work that way. Commander Chen reported from the weapons development facility, his voice excited with recent breakthroughs. Amy, the new quantum disruption torpedoes are ready for deployment. These weapons don't just damage alien ships. They interfere with the quantum fields that their faster-than-light drives use. Hit them with these, and they're stuck in normal space until they can rebuild their entire propulsion system. Amy felt the familiar thrill of a plan coming together. Perfect timing. Deploy the torpedoes to our stealth squadrons immediately. How many do we have? 500 units, with production increasing daily. We'll have enough for the major engagement. Major engagement was what military planners called the Battle of the Central Systems, the alien attempt to destroy humanity's core worlds in a single overwhelming assault. Intelligence suggested it would begin within days. Amy activated the galaxy-wide communication system to address all human forces simultaneously. All stations, all ships, all units. This is Lieutenant Rodriguez. The aliens are preparing their final assault. They believe that superior numbers and traditional tactics will overwhelm our defenses. They're about to learn why human beings survived everything Earth could throw at us for millions of years. She paused, thinking about the journey that had brought her from a SEAL recruit serving coffee to the strategic coordinator for humanity's war effort. The aliens see chaos as something to be controlled and eliminated. We see chaos as opportunity. When their perfect plans meet our improvised responses, we will show them why adaptability beats overwhelming force. Across human space, the response was immediate and enthusiastic. Every ship captain, every Marine commander, every defense coordinator knew what was expected of them. Not rigid adherence to predetermined plans, but creative problem-solving under pressure. Captain Rogers checked in from Phantom Squadron. Stealth units in position throughout alien space, ready to begin disruption operations on your command. Colonel Thompson confirmed Marine readiness. Boarding teams loaded and ready. The aliens have no idea what's coming. Admiral Hayes reported from the main battle fleet. All ships ready for combat. We've spread our forces across 17 systems as planned. The aliens will have to fight us on multiple fronts simultaneously. Amy watched the tactical display as alien fleets moved inexorably toward human space. 800 ships against fewer than 200 human vessels. By traditional calculations, humanity was doomed. But Amy had stopped thinking in traditional terms months ago. Execute Operation Pandemonium, she ordered. The human response began with Captain Rogers and his stealth squadrons. While alien fleets moved toward their targets in perfect formation, human ships appeared throughout their territory, striking supply bases, communication relays, and support vessels. The quantum disruption torpedoes proved devastatingly effective, stranding entire alien squadrons in normal space. Simultaneously, Colonel Thompson's Marines began boarding operations against alien command ships. Instead of trying to capture the vessels, they focused on creating maximum confusion and disruption. Teams of human soldiers armed with plasma rifles and personal shields appeared on alien bridges, disabled critical systems, and vanished before security could respond. The alien fleets, designed for coordinated operations under central command, began falling apart as their communication networks failed and their supply lines collapsed. Each fleet was forced to operate independently, exactly what Amy had hoped for. Admiral Hayes led the main human fleet in a series of running battles across multiple star systems. Instead of meeting the aliens head-on, human ships used hit-and-run tactics, striking fast and disappearing before the aliens could bring their superior firepower to bear. Amy coordinated the entire operation from Guardian Station, watching as centuries of alien military doctrine crumbled before human unpredictability. The aliens had planned for every contingency, except the one that mattered most, an enemy that didn't follow any rules they understood. "All units report," Amy requested, as the battle entered its second day. The responses painted a picture of unprecedented success. Alien fleets were scattered and demoralized, their command structure was in chaos. Many ships were abandoned in space, their crews unable to cope with the psychological pressure of fighting an enemy they couldn't predict or understand. Dr. Carter monitored alien communications throughout the battle. "Amy, you need to hear this. The alien commanders are requesting permission to withdraw. They're calling human tactics impossible and against the natural order of warfare." Amy smiled as she realized humanity had achieved something that seemed impossible just months ago. They hadn't just survived the alien assault. They had broken the will of species that had dominated the galaxy for centuries. "Signal all commands," Amy ordered. "Prepare for Phase 3 operations. It's time to take this war to them." 1 year after Amy Rodriguez had first challenged General Kane in that briefing room, she stood on the bridge of the flagship Independence as commander of Human Defense Forces, watching the largest fleet in galactic history prepare for the final battle of the First Interstellar War. The Battle of the Galactic Core would determine whether humanity joined the ranks of free civilizations or faced extinction at the hands of a desperate alien alliance. After months of defeats, the remaining alien species had gathered their combined fleets at the galaxy's center, making their last stand at the ancient space station known as Nexus Prime. Dr. Carter stood beside Amy, analyzing the final intelligence reports. "Every major species in the Galactic Council is represented in that fleet. Over 1,500 ships, including vessels we've never seen before. They're throwing everything they have at us." Amy studied the tactical display showing the alien position. Nexus Prime sat at the center of a massive defensive formation, protected by overlapping shield generators and weapons platforms that had been under construction for centuries. It was supposed to be impregnable. "They're still thinking like prey animals," Amy observed calmly. "Maximum defensive firepower, perfect geometric formations, rigid command structure. They've learned nothing from our previous engagements." General Kane, now Supreme Commander of Galactic Defense Forces, joined them on the bridge. "Amy, this is different from our earlier battles. They're not trying to attack us anymore. They're daring us to attack them. They want to force us into a traditional assault on prepared positions." Amy nodded, understanding the alien strategy. "They think that if they can force us to fight their kind of battle, superior numbers will win. They're probably right, if we fought the way they expect us to." Captain Rogers appeared on the communication screen from his position with the stealth fleet. "Amy, we've completed reconnaissance of the target area. The defensive positions are exactly as predicted. But we've also identified 17 critical vulnerabilities in their formation." Colonel Thompson reported from the Marine assault ships. "Boarding teams are ready for final deployment. We've got enough quantum disruption torpedoes to disable their entire fleet if we can get close enough. Commander Chen had outdone himself with new weapons designed specifically for this battle. The quantum cascade bombs are ready. Hit their central power grid with these, and the resulting chain reaction will disable every system within a 100-kilometer radius. Amy felt the weight of history on her shoulders. This battle would determine not just humanity's survival, but the future structure of galactic civilization. She activated the fleet-wide communication system to address the largest human military force ever assembled. All ships, all crews. This is Commander Rodriguez. 1 year ago, we faced extinction at the hands of species that saw us as inferior, beings to be controlled or eliminated. Today, we stand as equals ready to claim our rightful place among the stars. She paused, looking out at the thousands of human vessels spread across space, warships, support vessels, mobile bases, all crewed by people who had volunteered to fight for freedom. The aliens chose this battlefield because they believe superior numbers and defensive positions will overcome our tactical advantages. They're about to learn the final lesson in human warfare. Sometimes the best defense is a completely unpredictable offense. Amy turned to her tactical officer. Execute Operation Final Thunder. The human assault began in a way that defied every principle of military strategy the aliens understood. Instead of a coordinated frontal attack, human forces scattered in all directions, some heading directly for the alien formation, while others seemed to retreat toward empty space. Captain Rogers led his stealth squadrons in what appeared to be a desperate flanking maneuver, drawing alien attention to the left side of their formation. But while the aliens focused on tracking his ships, other human vessels were moving into position for the real attack. Colonel Thompson's Marines didn't wait for the main battle to begin. Her assault teams launched from concealed positions throughout the battlefield, using quantum tunneling drives to appear inside the alien defensive perimeter. Instead of boarding ships, they targeted the space stations and weapons platforms that anchored the alien formation. The aliens, expecting a traditional fleet engagement, found themselves fighting boarding actions on their most heavily defended installations while their ships were out of position to provide support. Amy watched the battle develop according to the plan she had spent months perfecting. Admiral Hayes, take the main fleet directly toward their center. Make them think we're attempting a frontal assault. Admiral Hayes led 60 capital ships in what looked like a suicidal charge toward the strongest part of the alien formation. The aliens responded exactly as Amy had predicted, concentrating their firepower on the approaching threat while leaving other areas weakened. Now, Commander Chen, deploy the cascade bombs. Chen's weapons teams had spent weeks infiltrating the area around Nexus Prime, hiding quantum cascade bombs in asteroids and debris fields throughout the battlefield. When they detonated simultaneously, the resulting energy pulse disabled the alien fleet's coordination systems and left their ships operating independently. The aliens, who had built their entire defensive strategy around coordinated firepower, suddenly found themselves fighting as individual vessels against an enemy that specialized in chaos and improvisation. Amy opened a communication channel to the alien command ship. Admiral Vorthak, this is Commander Rodriguez. Surrender now and we'll discuss terms for a peaceful resolution to this conflict. Vorthak's reptilian face appeared on the screen, his scales dark with defeat and exhaustion. Your tactics are impossible, human. How do you coordinate such complex operations without central command? We don't coordinate them, Amy replied. We trust our people to think independently and adapt to changing circumstances. That's something your species never learned to do. The battle continued for another 6 hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. Human forces operating in small groups with independent command authority systematically dismantled the alien defensive network. The cascade bombs had eliminated their ability to coordinate responses, leaving them vulnerable to precisely the kind of asymmetric warfare humans had perfected. When the final alien ship surrendered, Amy found herself looking at a tactical display that showed something unprecedented in galactic history. A complete military victory by a species that had been in space for less than a century. Dr. Carter approached with the final casualty reports. Amy, human losses were remarkably light. The aliens lost over 60% of their fleet while we lost less than 10% of ours. General Kane activated the communication system for a fleet-wide announcement. All human forces. This is Supreme Commander Kane. The Battle of the Galactic Core is complete. We have achieved total victory. The war is over. The celebration that erupted across the human fleet was audible even through the vacuum of space, as ships sounded their horns and crews cheered on every deck. But Amy felt no joy, only relief and a deep sense of responsibility for what came next. 3 months later, Amy stood before the reformed Galactic Council on Concordia Station, representing humanity in negotiations for a new interstellar treaty. The chamber that had once echoed with threats and demands for human submission now listened respectfully as she outlined terms for genuine cooperation between equals. The Human Defense Compact, Amy announced, offers membership to any species willing to respect the sovereignty and independence of others. We propose a galactic community based on mutual benefit rather than domination. The alien representatives, many bearing the scars of their defeat, listened carefully as Amy presented humanity's vision for the future. Gone were the integration, treaties designed to control and subjugate new species. In their place was a framework for cooperation that respected the unique strengths each civilization could contribute. Admiral Vorthak, now representing the much-reduced Zephyrian Empire, spoke for many in the chamber. Commander Rodriguez, your species has proven that cooperation and adaptability can overcome superior numbers and technology. We accept your proposal for genuine partnership. As the session ended and the various alien delegations filed out to consider humanity's offer, Amy found herself alone in the great chamber thinking about the chain of events that had brought her here. It had started with a simple decision to speak up when she saw something wrong. That moment of courage in a briefing room had led to the largest war in galactic history, and ultimately to humanity's emergence as the dominant power among the stars. General Kane joined her at the viewing port overlooking the planet below. Any regrets about how things turned out? Amy thought about all the people who had died in the war, all the families torn apart by conflict, all the destruction that might have been avoided if the aliens had chosen cooperation over domination from the beginning. I regret the necessity of war, she said finally, but I don't regret fighting for our freedom. Someone had to stand up and say that humanity wouldn't accept slavery disguised as partnership. And now? Amy looked out at the stars, knowing that human ships were exploring regions of the galaxy that had been forbidden to them just months ago.